Recently, I saw this post on Twitter from a good friend, Eric Capiano. Now, let me say, Eric is a great guy, an absolute wizard in digital forensics, incident response, all that great blue team defense work, and I'm a big fan. So he tweeted out that PsExec, one of the tools in the sysinternal suite, oftentimes used for lateral movement in offensive security, ethical hacking, as well as red teaming, penetration testing, and actual illicit cybercrime. But he noted as a sweet digital forensics artifact on the receiving end, the victim or target computer of a PsExec lateral movement trick, a file will quickly get dropped onto the file system, and its name contains the host name of the attacking system. So this is a good breadcrumb to be able to use to find what machine attacked another, who hacked who. Now, if I may say, this is actually something that we covered in a previous video at an interview with Mike Cohen and Matt Green, the folks behind Velociraptor. Again, another incredible, phenomenal digital forensics and incident response tool, but we were digging into a recent change in an older version of PsExec, now current regular edition, that actually drops a key file that includes this artifact. We could track it down, and this is something that has been in this video for a year, and of course this has been out in previous years, but I think this deserves a video of its own to see it in action. Back to Eric's tweet for a quick moment. He does note that there are other tools that might do this, have that same functionality of leaving behind an artifact, but it is worthwhile to use for forensics purposes. He links a blog post that we'll use as kind of a roadmap to walk through this, and other folks are chiming in that there are other options for this remote control or lateral movement. Of course, you could use enter PS session, a PowerShell remote session, or invoke command to interact with other hosts and computers remotely. Let's dive into this blog post, though. Hey, big shout out, credit where credit is due. This is Fabian Mendoza, way back in January of 2023. So it's old news, but worthwhile for your knowledge in case you didn't know, because some folks didn't know, apparently. Look, PsExec, again, one of those tools in the Microsoft sysinternal suite. You can find the sysinternal suite online, of course, Microsoft website, Microsoft documentation. Hey, big thanks, kudos again, props to Mark Rusanovich for building the whole thing. And if you wanted to, you could use Sysinternals Live, a remote, easy online SMB utility, really just using the backslashes here to reach the network share live.sysinternals.com/tools. Of course, you could download the whole thing if you wanted to, but I'll include a link in the video description, so that's available for you. Now, of course, this can be used and abused, even in deploying ransomware, lots of ransomware cases and incidents, or just general, hey, post-exploitation. So he walks through a couple artifacts that are helpful for us. If you're working in the Windows Event Viewer, you might be able to track down a syslog. With all that background context out of the way, though, let's do the demo and showcase. So I'm working with two different virtual machines here. One will be my attacking host. This will be the offender, the hacker, the adversary, and I'm just on a Windows machine here with the dark theme. The other machine I'll work with, this is my just virtual machine labeled M365 Playground, and this will be in light mode. This will be our victim. This is the target and who we'll hack into and use PsExec. Now let me hop back over to the attacker machine, and I'll open up a Windows terminal with admin privileges, so I hit Control-Shift-Enter on my keyboard here, and I will full screen that with F11, zoom in to make the text a little bit bigger here for us, and I will invoke the sysinternal suite folder that I have downloaded and the PsExec utility. Now, this is typically something that you'll need to accept the EULA for if you haven't done that ever before, and of course, not using that with any arguments will give you all the help outputs. And you've seen this usually in maybe even past videos or your own work where you'll actually invoke locally a system session with that TAC-S and an interactive command prompt or any other application that you want to run, but TAC-I to make it interactive and cmd.exe as an example. Now, you'll note here, if I run who am I am NT-Authority system, but all running locally. If we wanted to use this on the remote computer, or actually target another machine, we will need to actually have this set up as it should be. Now, PsExec uses SMB as a protocol, the server message block, and it actually ends up working with the admin $share. The $ suffix network shares are a little bit special. You know, the C $share to be able to see, access, and work with your file system alongside the admin $share. These are usually invisible. You can't just go view them within the graphical user interface, but they are available by default. They're always set up and natural to the Windows operating system. But to be able to work with them on a remote system, you do have to have some of the firewall settings configured. I've seen, and I've had the best luck with actually enabling the SMB in, because again, this is working with the server message block. If I search for that in the advanced Windows firewall, you can toggle this with NetSH or any PowerShell commands you'd like, as you'd expect. But I've seen that in file and printer sharing, and because I'm working this locally, the private profile is probably fine. Now, this is currently disabled, but just as an example, let me show you. Look, the host name for this computer is simply M365box. Now, local environment, I should be able to access that from the target hacker machine, the actual adversary, back to our dark mode villain here. If I full screen this, let me try to ping our M365 box, and that will, hey, get at least an IP address. IPv6, whatever, but that knows what it is and can request it. It's Windows, so by default, ICMP packets aren't allowed, but we're good. With that, we could try to use our psexec command once again, but rather than making a session as system locally, let's try to actually use those 2 backslashes to denote the computer that we want to work with. Let me use the M365 box, and let's try to open, again, an interactive command prompt, cmd.exe. This will work and try to connect, well, work towards trying to connect, but it's never going to come through because we need to allow that via the firewall. I'm just falling down this rabbit hole so you can see a little bit of the setup to play with that environment. Let me go ahead and actually enable this rule. Now, if we hop back here, let's try it one more time. We run this exact same command. Oh, okay, seemed to get through, but wasn't seeing the admin share working. I believe we were working just a little bit too fast. We'll give it just a few seconds for, hey, those changes to actually come into effect, and we'll try that one more time. Now, we will connect, but it tells me, oh, the username or password is incorrect. You, of course, need to have credentials or some way to authenticate on that remote host. So in this case, if you don't mind, hey, a little bit of suspended disbelief for the sake of the showcase, education, and demonstration, let me specify, hey, we had uncovered local admin credentials for this host. This is simply a password with a fancy pass, and look, your initial access, exploitation, whatever hacking campaign, you track that down. Just wanted to showcase the artifacts here, but we're still getting access denied. So let me get back to the victim and configure this so it'll work well for us. I had tried to do some digging online, just a small little bit of research, and I noticed that, look, you might actually need to set a registry setting. So if I open up the registry editor, back in the path HK local machine, software, Microsoft Windows, current version, policy system, yada, 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 you might not have this key here. This actual value here for local account token filter policy should be created as a reg D word, and that value, once you create it, really should be set to 1. Now with that, you'll be able to access it. I've seen a whole lot of other commentary on this over on the old internet in Googs saying that, like, oh, you could turn on auto share server, other share. So, let me say, I am by no means an expert here. I am just trying to learn it just as well, just as all of us. So please feel free to spot check me, complain, whine, and, help me learn and correct in the comments. Now, let's try this. And you can see we are successfully starting psexec and the service SVC suffix here on the host M365 box. This takes a little bit of time, but I promise it'll come through. Okay, there we go. Now we have a command prompt. I can run who am I, and you'll see that I'm on the M365 box as a local admin. And if I were to just run hostname, look, we're still there as if we were on just that other host for our M365 playground and the victim computer in this demo. Before we dig into some of those forensic artifacts, though, and keep following the blog, please allow me to tell you a little bit about the sponsor of today's video, Vanta. Whether you're starting or scaling your company's security program, demonstrating top-notch security practices and establishing trust is more important than ever. Vanta automates compliance for SOC 2, ISO 27001, HIPAA, and more, saving you time and money, while helping you build customer trust. You can streamline security reviews by automating questionnaires and demonstrating your security posture with a customer-facing Trust Center, all powered by Vanta AI. Over 7,000 global companies like Atlassian, Flow Health, and Quora use Vanta to manage risk and prove security in real time. And you get a special offer of $1,000 off Vanta with my link below in the video description, jh.live/Vanta for $1,000 off. That's a discount just for our community, jh.live/Vanta for $1,000 off. Huge thanks to Vanta for sponsoring this video. All right, back to it. Now, let's take the perspective of, hey, the incident responder, the analyst, the folks that don't have access to the hacker's computer, the attacker machine, but only the victim and the target, the compromised host. So the way that you could identify PSExec was executed is to look on system 7045 service install, because this event is tracking for whenever a new service is created, and just as you saw with the functionality of PSExec, it will momentarily create a service. So we'll go take a look for this log. Back on our target host, let me open up the Windows event viewer here, and with that getting ready for us, let's move over to the Windows logs and take a look at the system log. Now, there's usually a lot here. I think it's trying to load just about 91 events, so small stuff. Hey, it's in a virtual machine environment. But if I were to now filter the current log, click on that dialog over here, we'll enter the event IDs that we want to look for. Now, let's narrow down on just 7045 as the blog post suggested, and with that, we'll see a couple information entries. Take a look. Bringing this up here, a service was installed on the system, service name, PSExec service, and just as everything that we would expect, there's a little breadcrumb, there's a puzzle piece that tells us that's going down. Oh, there's me testing a couple days back. Yep, it still works. One thing that is important to note, though, is that this service name is configurable. You, as the adversary or attacker, could manipulate that. We might have seen a little bit of a preview in the blog post, but let me open up another terminal window. I'll go ahead and see sysinternals PSExec one more time. We could accept EULA. Let's get back to that M365 box with our credentials, local admin, and password. Let's run just a simple host name, but now we'll use a TAC-R flag, where we can rename or change this to be our attack, or whatever service name we want. You can, of course, change that, customize it, but I'll hit enter there, and it'll go through the whole process one more time. Looking back at our victim, we should be able to see that log. We'll give it just a little bit to make sure this command comes through. I do want to validate, hey, it's all confirmed for us. Now let's pivot back to our victim. You can see me over here back in the event log. Let me try to refresh this log. Oh, and we don't quite have the log entry. So I made a mistake, and actually, I'm thinking I know what the issue might be. If we actually were to take a look at the help for PSExec, we do need to make sure that our TAC-R argument, the option here, all comes before the CMD and the actual command that we want to run. So in the previous instance where I included that /R over on the side, let me actually make sure, we'll bring that a little bit earlier in the command. We'll call it our attack there, just following. How about now? Yep, starting our attack service on M365 box. I should have known that as it displayed it in the output. Okay, now we've got the hostname output M365 box, and back in our event viewer, I did just reopen it, close and reopen it to make sure, hey, we're actually getting some of the latest works here. I'll filter one more time, 7045, and there we go. Now we have a new entry, new event. Our attack is logged here. So note that is customizable. The blog post, again, I'll include a link in the video description, does dig into some of the source host example. So if you're on the attacking machine some way, somehow, if you were able to dig into these artifacts, you would see a security event 4624 being the event ID. Now, what we really wanted to drill down into was the PSExec key file. This is a new identification method, and they're talking about the USN journal as to how you might track that down. Starting with PSExec version 2.30, which was released in early 2021, so some time ago. But if we look back on our attacker machine, we are using version 2.43. So we're good, we're on track with the version changes, and we should see this in effect. Anytime a PSExec command is executed, a .key file gets written to the file system and will be recorded in the USN journal. If you want to do a quick Google search here, the USN journal is the Update Sequence Number Journal, or Change Journal, feature of the Windows NT file system, NTFS, that maintains a record of changes made to the disk and the volume. So here's the gimmick. PSExec will follow a naming convention of a file to drop with PSExec as a prefix, the source hostname, the attacking computer that this came from, and 8 unique characters .key with the file extension. It'll be dropped and located in the C/Windows directory or system root, using that environment variable, the %, system root, and like DOS variables, right? Keep in mind, if PSExec is run on a system against itself, just like we did at the very start with TAC-S, TAC-I, CMD, just to elevate to system, the .key file name will include the same source host name as the system itself, where PSExec was originally ran. We could dig into the artifact, see it actually on our attacking machine if we wanted to, but again, let's just use the perspective we only have access to the victim computer. If you wanted to dig into this, you could use some of the sweet tools by Eric Zimmerman. He has an incredible amount of stuff, fantastic over on his website. Really recommend you like to look through those, and honestly, I wanted to make a video for every single one of those tools because they're so cool. If you can tie together the System 7045 event on the victim and getting the USN journal file create on the host, that adds a little bit more fidelity to your findings. That actually helps prove and validate that you are absolutely seeing this PsExec activity. Obviously, this is incredibly helpful when you're working on real cases, any ransomware engagement incidents that you're tracking. So definitely, I hope, a valuable tool in your tool belt for some DFIR. But what I would love to showcase a little bit simply is this PsExec key file when you're tracking it down via prefetch, because Windows Prefetch is a mechanism on Windows to be able to cache and store some other application information, metadata and things that'll allow it to load up and start a new application a little bit faster, in a better way. So prefetch files are super duper handy for, again, that investigative work, because you can track down a little bit more insight on what was executed and ran on that computer. Now, of course, again, credit where credit is due. Big thanks and shout out to Richard Davis. I believe he runs the YouTube channel 13Cubed, and he showcased this in his video detecting PsExec usage and demonstrated this capability. I think discovered, hey, that whole capability to find these .key files. If you're interested, I'm sure he does a better job covering it than I do. So again, I'll include a link in the video description. Big thanks, shout out 13Cubed and Richard Davis. So, prefetch, which is evidence of execution artifacts in Windows, can also be leveraged to identify these key files. When PsExec is executed, the service executable file will be created on the target system by default. Of course, maybe you could have whatever name with the source system that you chose in the service name with that TAC-R option, but the prefetch file can then be parsed in order to find all the files that were referenced by its execution. So, we could use some more of those tools from Eric Zimmerman and his sweet website and resources for all of these incredible tools. And he has so many of these. Take a look. Amcache Parser, App Compat Cache Parser. My goodness, that's a tongue twister. Event Extractor, working with the Windows Event Viewer, of course. Jump List. Oh man, there's so much stuff here. We are looking for the PECMD that I may have just scrolled past here. Yep. There it is, 1.5.00. Now, I have downloaded that PECMD tool from Eric Zimmerman's website, and I have that stored here just on the victim host itself, so we can work with it and play with it in that simple, small, local environment. But ultimately, we'll end up passing in some of the files from the C Windows Prefetch directory. Again, all of these are available, and you will need administrative access to be able to see everything that's in this file. So if you extract it or you pull out that artifact, recover it and retrieve it with Velociraptor, or whatever incident response DFIR tools you might use. Anyway, let's showcase that PECMD tool. But again, I will need admin access when I'm working with this utility and accessing these files here. So let me just go ahead and run that PCMD executable. The way that we work with this is super simple. We just apply the option argument TAC-F to give a file to process. You could use this or TAC-D with the full directory if you wanted to look through absolutely everything in a prefetch folder or any other samples here. But let's go ahead and use it with that TAC-F, and I'll go inside the C Windows directory with prefetch, and I want to look for, do we have our attack included here? Is that one mentioned? It is. So we have our attack.exe in the prefetch file. That is seeing the execution of the executable that was ran by the PsExec service. Now I'll hit enter on this, and that's pretty sweet. You can dig into all the files that are referenced, all the directories that were used, everything that might have been necessary for that program to execute. Kind of sweet. But if we scroll through all of this output, really sweet timestamps to use for timeline tracking an incident. Anyway, what I want to dig into, in the files reference section, you can see the executable itself, our attack.exe, but we want to keep an eye out for those key files. Do you see them? Do you have an idea? Take a look. PsExec TAC Windows 11 177980007. Again, that's that 8-character random string, but our .key file extension. Now, this isn't all too telling because, look, a virtual machine is called Windows 11, but at the very least, now you have the source host, the attacking machine, the one that fired off PsExec to run and execute on this target. Now, there's no secrets here. Obviously, if I hop back over to my Windows development machine, just our attacker, just our little adversary, it's a Windows 11 host name of the box. And there we go. super small, super simple, but might be a super cool breadcrumb when you're working through this and you see PsExec used in a case that you're working. Of course, Fernando's blog covers this just as well, showcases exactly the same thing that we did, and has a little bit of a wrap-up small conclusion here, noting these two little, hey, breadcrumbs and puzzle pieces you could use. System 7045 and that event ID, and, hey, tracking down the psexec.key file. I think, and I would agree, those .key files are one of the best ways to track this down. Some other sweet resources for you if you're interested in the SANS Forensics 508 class in their Hunt Evil poster, of course, the Microsoft post that actually includes this, and of course, 13Cube and his video showcase. Big shout out. Again, I can't say this enough. I'm trying to really emphasize that, look, I don't know all this stuff. I'm learning, and we're standing on the shoulders of giants with everything that we get to dig into in this whole big, vast, wide cybersecurity world. With all that said, thanks again to Eric for nerd sniping me with this, wanting to bring it back to the surface and having a real dedicated video to showcase this cool artifact from PsExec in the .key files. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please do give some love to our sponsors, link in the video description, and I hope you enjoy the video. Like, comment, subscribe, all the YouTube algorithm things, you know the drill. Thanks so much. I'll see you in the next video.